Well, hi there. I'm meteorologist Mike Simon in for Cassie Knoll, and this is your 10 weather impact recap for the week. Let's start off with a look at some of the top weather stories from around the country. Welcome to meteorological spring. In the world of weather, we define the seasons by calendar months and average temperatures. So the months of March, April, and May make up the spring season. Over the next 3 months, average highs rise from the mid-50s to the low 80s, and daylight hours increase significantly. Well, current outlooks for March from the Climate Prediction Center shows confidence in above-average temperatures overall, and the potential for near to above-average precipitation. Astronomical spring begins on March 20th, with the spring equinox. But while we've had a warm start to the month so far, there's a good chance that we will have additional cold snaps throughout the spring season. Well, speaking of cold weather, in Alaska, people expect to deal with extreme winter conditions. But for one remote community, this season has put them in a dangerous situation. Residents of Denali Borough, the gateway to the Denali National Park, are running out of fuel, food, and medicine after being cut off from the outside world for more than a week by heavy snow. Jace Bertrand has this story.
Alaskans are no strangers to snow, but almost 10 feet of it?
We had a massive snowstorm within the entire week where it snowed about 2 feet for 2 days. Within a week's time, we had 6 to 8 feet of snow with 40-mile-an-hour winds with drifting.
Heather McGorty says many families live several miles from the nearest main road, making it almost impossible to get supplies.
I had just gotten my truck stuck, which normally that thing really can move a lot of snow, and it's just been getting progressively colder. Now it's at the point where equipment really doesn't operate well when it gets past minus 20.
After 9 days of being snowed in, families are at risk of running out of fuel and firewood.
Fuel-wise, for running generators or any of that, I have about a week's worth, and that's pushing it. That same generator runs our well, so it can get very discouraging.
There's about 4 gallons left there. That's not going to get us far. I've run out of some of my own medication, and, I'm going to have to get out at some point. We can't wait another month.
Joseph Chatfield says several people have attempted to travel to Healy by snow machine, but have not been able to make it. With each passing day, residents feel more frustrated with the borough's response to the situation.
A lot of us out here have been self-sufficient, and we've never really had to ask for help from the borough, and the one time we do really ask for help for the winter time, we just get no real answer.
We're prepared for living off grid, and this is a lifestyle that we've chosen and we're well prepared for, but this is not something that is a normal circumstance.
Denali Borough Mayor Chris Knoll said in a statement, quote, "We are communicating and coordinating closely with our Department of Transportation partners to determine what role we can best serve to help our impacted communities. As conditions show no sign of improving, the situation becomes more dangerous each day."
Well, in California, oysters have been farmed on the Central Coast for more than 100 years. But there's an impending danger putting the multi-million-dollar industry in jeopardy. Vivian Renee takes an in-depth look at how oyster farmers are tackling the impacts of a more acidic environment.
This really healthy, beautiful bay, it's kind of this unique place where unique oysters are coming out.
Beneath the waves in Morro Bay, nearly 5 million oysters are growing. On shore, the hands of shuckers work quickly to keep up.
I want to say about 800 dozen a week here, and it varies quite a bit depending on demand.
But there is a looming threat. Changing climate conditions are putting aquaculture at risk.
Temperature, pH being the big one, like ocean acidification. These are all things that we're very aware of.
Just inland at Cal Poly, researchers at the Center for Coastal and Marine Science are on the case. I visited Emily Bachman's research lab to learn more.
Unfortunately, we have a really robust documentation of seawater pH decreasing with time, and this is associated with the rise in atmospheric CO2.
Picture it like this. With more CO2 in our air, more of it hits the water, where it dissolves and creates an acid. That lowers the pH.
So this idea that seawater pH is decreasing with time, and the idea that Low pH creates an environment that may be harder for oysters to grow their shells.
The start of an oyster's life is the most vulnerable.
Ocean acidification has made it harder for hatcheries because it's at that point when the babies are really, really babies that they have trouble forming their shells.
At the floating upwelling system, or FLEPSI, oyster seeds grow from just millimeters to the size of a quarter before they're put into the bay. The good news for these farmers:
we have really strong shells here. That's one of the, I guess, advantages of our water here. It's not something we deal with too much with brittle shells, so they generally tend to do pretty well.
Water coming into the bay from Choro Creek carries compounds that neutralize the acid.
Fortunately, what they've seen, at least here, is it seems like the creek influx is buffering the bay a little bit. It adds different carbonate, helping prevent that acidification from taking place.
Despite limited losses in Morro Bay, hatcheries across the West Coast are struggling.
I did hear of a hatchery having a big problem with it in Oregon, near where I'm from originally.
While the impacts aren't being felt here just yet, widespread acidification is expected within the next century. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, the ocean is the most acidic it has ever been in the last 2 million years.
We're definitely going to see lower pH in Morro Bay in the future. You know, when we think in the terms of decades of scale time, pH will be lower. And so that's something that the farms are going to have to contend with.
From my perspective is that Morro Bay Oyster Company and Grassy Bar Oyster Company are adapting and finding really positive ways to move forward.
They are investing time and money into the market of the native Olympia oyster and putting pH-lowering seagrasses on the farms.
There's been a lot of discussion of co-locating seagrasses with oyster beds to sort of manage different seawater chemistry. The seagrasses can help raise the seawater pH.
California oyster farms are quickly figuring out what to do about it. So I just think there's a whole lot of hope.
Well, spring is just around the corner, and that means colorful flowers are starting to appear in Southern California. The hill above Carlsbad Ranch near San Diego is already putting on a show, and this year the flowers have appeared a little earlier than usual. Even though New Year's Day brought rain, the rest of winter has stayed relatively dry in San Diego, something that the flowers have actually loved.
Allowed our fields that you'll see behind me to germinate quickly, meaning kind of come to life, get green faster than normal.
Operations Manager Taylor Moss says that the peak bloom is expected between the 1st and 3rd week of April, with more than 80 million flowers ready to paint the rolling hills in rows of red, pink, orange, and yellow. Well, in Arizona, toasty temperatures were the big headline at the end of February. On Friday, the 27th, and Saturday, the 28th, Phoenix reached a high temperature of 92 degrees, tying the record for warmest temperature recorded during meteorological winter. This winter was the warmest on record in Phoenix by a long shot. The average temperature of 64 degrees beats the previous record set just last year by almost 3 degrees. Well, with temperatures approaching the triple digits much earlier than usual, lettuce farmers in Yuma, Arizona are accelerating their harvest operations this season, and that's pushing growers to adjust schedules and logistics to protect crop quality. Karina Bazzarati has the story.
It's lettuce harvest season. As temperatures rise, farmers already have a plan in place to keep lettuce looking fresh.
You know, the weather's been a little unusual this year, but the heat does impact our crops.
John Boltz is a co-owner of Desert Premium Farms in Yuma. His family has been in the farming industry for generations.
I'm a 5th generation to farm in the U.S. and 2nd generation to farm here in Yuma County.
The lettuce grown here ends up on dinner tables across the U.S. and Canada. This is how lettuce looks when it's ready.
You don't want the knife in the dirt, so you want to keep it above the dirt, yeah. And you can slide it down, and just give it a cut there. Sorry, my knife's not very sharp.
It's okay.
And then
it's time for salad.
In each acre, there's about 60,000+ servings. for an individual, so an individual salad.
But Bolt says this season, the weather has been different, and it's creating challenges. Last fall, Yuma received nearly 3 times the normal rainfall, and now the temperature is already in the 90s.
Now we're getting ready for harvest. It's been through some warmer temps than we normally would expect.
Bolt says it's speeding up the harvest. Farm workers having to start early as 4 a.m., and when the temperatures get closer to the triple digits, they'll start at night. It's a race against the heat.
And once we cut a head of lettuce to get it into the cold chain quickly, so we want to get it cut in the packaging in the field and to a local cooler. Here we're about a 35 to 45 minute drive into town, and so they need to get it cut, palletized, cartonized, palletized, and on a truck headed to Yuma fairly quickly.
Now, the warm conditions this winter have also created an elevated fire danger in Colorado. One local fire chief says he's scared when he looks outside, and it's not just the lack of snow. A combination of dry conditions and tall standing grass has created a compounding issue, increasing the risk of fast-moving, hard-to-stop wildfires in Colorado. Bill Folsom shares the details from the Front Range of the Rockies.
For locals, how is this one feeling to you?
This is the driest we've seen it in 12 and a half years.
And for the Florissant Fire Chief.
Every day it scares me when I look outside and I see that we have no snow and we have no moisture and that the grass is standing tall.
Upright vegetation, the chief refers to, is a factor added to lack of water and high winds.
What we're dealing with right now is a compounding issue.
The area has had some snow this year, but it's been more dusting than deep.
Historically, in years, a heavy snowpack would push down the vegetation and the grasses into the soil and make for a small flame length, as we call it in the fire service.
Here's the idea. A light covering, like light snow, on weeds, and it holds it up. Then think of a day out shoveling and how heavy the snow can be. This simulates it, a couple of pounds. Put that on top of the weeds, and those grasses, after a while, stay down.
Because we haven't had those heavy snows, those grasses are still 1 to 3 feet tall in certain areas, which is going to create a taller flame front that will move through areas.
The taller the flame during a grass fire, the harder it is to stop and prevent from moving up into trees. It's a current concern.
I'm not seeing snow yet, but I've seen March and April and even May just open up, just dump.
Longtime locals also know it can be countered if weather patterns change soon.
Back here in the southeast, the price to rebuild I-40 after Hurricane Helene just jumped by $900 million on the North Carolina side. It's a drastic increase from the estimate we heard last summer. Lauren Lovett checked in with the transportation leaders here in East Tennessee and in Western North Carolina too. She explains the costs and the timeline for when that connection will be fully reopened.
Crews have made a lot of progress on the North Carolina side of Interstate 40 since last summer.
On one side of the river is a borrow site. A new bridge, a temporary bridge, has been installed across the river, and that leads to 2 crusher plants as well as a concrete plant. In addition to that, the causeway has extended all the way from the double tunnels out to the state line.
David Uchiyama with NCDOT says those aren't the only changes. The estimated cost for the project has now increased by $900 million.
So how and why did it rise so much? There is more geological information available now that was not available beforehand. And that includes the safest and best long-term measures include digging deeper into the bedrock. That makes things a little more expensive, but that also means things will last a lot longer.
Making things last longer is important. As he says, they're essentially rebuilding the interstate from scratch.
What is happening now and what will be happening for the next several years will be a substantial reinforcement of the existing mountainside. What this will do is that it will ensure I-40 will remain in place for several generations.
Here in Tennessee, Mark Nagy with TDOT says while North Carolina seemed to get more damage, there's still a lot of work that has to happen on this side.
There's actually 7 separate sections on the eastbound side of the roadway closer to the river that saw different levels of damage. So work continues on those sections. We are rebuilding the roadway there. We are restabilizing that slope, and it is a long and arduous process.
But also one that's less expensive compared to our neighbors at $245 million.
I-40 construction is set to finish in Tennessee by fall of next year. Now, on the North Carolina side, it'll be the end of 2028. Both transportation leaders say while you can still travel one lane in each direction, there are other routes drivers can take as well. Well, let's get a check of your 7-day forecast for you. It is looking very warm. We're going to be having temperatures rivaling records, and we may even set some new records soon. We also have several chances of rain, which will help out and alleviate some of the drought conditions that are still widespread across East Tennessee. Well, thanks for watching. Remember, you can get the latest forecast and watch our 24/7 live radar anytime with the WBIR Plus app. You can also download the app for free and watch on your TV. I'm meteorologist Mike Simon for 10 News.